You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. LSU hit the practice field for the first time in spring on Saturday. No media availability. Tigers are back out there today. As a matter of fact, the media doesn't have our first availability until Wednesday. So we'll get to go see a little bit of practice on Wednesday, and then Brian Kelly will meet with reporters after practice on Wednesday. But one of the things that was interesting from Saturday is, of course, LSU issued an updated roster before spring practice, and one of the newcomers did not have a jersey number, and that was Josh Thompson. So the offensive lineman out of Northwestern. So I started asking around a little bit, doing a little digging, and we reported this over the weekend at LouisianaSports.net. It turns out Josh Thompson is still in Evanston. He's Northwestern offensive lineman transfer. He's still in Evanston because Northwestern is on a quarters system. So their quarter, instead of semesters, their quarter doesn't end until March 21st. So that's a week from Friday. So whenever their quarter ends on March 21st, then he will come join his new teammates at LSU. So as it maps out, he'll be able to participate in about half of the practices this spring. So he'll miss about half of spring practice, and he'll be here for the second half of spring practice. It'll be 7 or 8 practices that he'll be able to participate in. And in the meantime, when they were out there for the first day, the first offensive line, again, there was no media access, so I'm just relying on people who were there, just share information and pass information. No big surprise, but Tyree Adams was your left tackle. Paul Mbenga was your left guard. Remember, that's how they lined up in the bowl game. Mbenga, of course, from the Alabama game on, started in place of the injured Garrett Dellinger. Braylon Moore, the Virginia Tech transfer at center, was running first-team center. And then DJ Chester, who, of course, started all 13 games at center a year ago, was playing right guard. Now, we've talked about DJ Chester a good bit. He was, and you hate to say it this way, but Chester was your weakest link on the offensive line a year ago. He's a young player who was also playing out of position. He's a natural guard who was playing center and was playing that position and starting for the first time. But he's got 13 games of starting experience now, so moving him with that experience to his more natural position, I think, is going to be a huge benefit. So Chester was your first-team right guard, and then Weston Davis was your first-team right tackle, the former 5-star, who got to play a lot in the bowl game as well. The others that were rotating, Bo Bordelon was rotating in there pretty heavily, as was, Carius Kern. And that's one that I think we should all be real excited about. Kern finished as a 5-star, as we well know, and boy, he is a unit. If you saw the pictures that LSU released over the weekend from practice, 6'5", 335 is what they have him registered at, and he looks the part. Like Brian Kelly, when he talked about Kern being physically ready to play, like he looks the part. I mean, we'll see if that translates, and then when you're going against, 20, 21, 22-year-old interior defensive lineman, if he's able to hold up, and then the speed of the game and everything. But just physically, yeah, it looks the part. And for whatever it's worth, Brian Kelly talked about, this was back at the beginning of February, about the competition on the offensive line in the spring, because while Moore is slotted in at center, I mentioned you have Kern coming in, you have Solomon Thomas coming in as well, the 5-star who flipped from Florida State to LSU on signing day. The guys that I just mentioned, that eventually you'll have Josh Thompson coming in that mix as well. And guys, really, if you assume Moore and Thompson, the 2 transfers, are going to be starting, well, then you've got all those other guys I mentioned, Adams, Mbenga, Chester, Davis, Bordelon, Kern, all those guys. Cohen Eccles, by the way, is someone I shouldn't leave out, because Eccles, as I understand, rotated in there with the 2s as well at center. That's 7 or 8 guys vying for those other 3 spots. So you should have some really, really staunch competition here in the spring on the offensive line.
We can start with in the portal, Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson will be part of that mix in the spring. But it's important to point out that, there's going to be great competition. And you saw that in the bowl game, how really if you look across the board, Miles Frazier is the only player that does not return in that unit. So all of those guys will get the opportunity to compete. Plus the two that I've mentioned that were starters both at Virginia Tech and Northwestern, we think that makes for a very competitive spring.
Now, it would be a massive upset if Braylon Moore doesn't win the starting center job. I think we're all assuming that's going to happen. That's a multi-year starter, an all-conference caliber player from Virginia Tech, the top center in the portal. You identified that as a real need. You went and got the best guy in the portal. That's why the first day of spring, he was out there running with the ones at center. Okay, it would be an upset if he doesn't win that job. Thompson is a little more curious because while he is a guy they are anticipating starting, and this is a multi-year starter at Northwestern, he played 761 snaps in 2023, played 646 snaps this past year in 2024. He started at both tackle and at guard. They, meaning LSU staff, would love it if Adams, Davis, Bordelon, some combination of these really highly rated guys that you've recruited out of high school and developed, if those guys win the starting tackle jobs, so Thompson could play guard, which is where they think he's probably better. But if you have to play him at tackle, they will. Think bowl game where we saw Miles Frazier. You just heard Brian Kelly mention it. Frazier, who was a tackle at FIU, came to LSU. He played right guard where he started for 3 years. But in the bowl game, after both of your starting tackles, Will Campbell and Emory Jones were gone, they moved Miles Frazier out to tackle for the bowl game. So if out of necessity, they would move Thompson to right tackle, but that would not be ideal. They would prefer him to play right guard and have one of these guys emerge at right tackle. For whatever it's worth, when you look at the Pro Football Focus grades from Thompson in his career, he went from a 55, total offensive grade of 55 in 2022 to a 58.5 in 2023 to a 73.1. That would have put him right there among LSU's highest rated offensive linemen last year. So and he had a pass block rate of 80, a run block rate of 73.4. So he would have been, right there with Campbell and Miles Frazier and Dellinger as your highest rated offensive lineman this past season. So that's what they're hoping. You get a guy that's a plug-and-play starter who's played a ton of football, who hopefully can slot in on the inside there with Braylon Moore, be real formidable between the tackles. So something to follow. A couple of other quick notes. And again, I'm just repeating, there was no media availability, so I'm not telling you anything that I saw with my own eyes. I'm just passing along notes that were shared with me from people that I deem credible that were at practice. There were there was no Colin Hurley at practice, which I don't think that's any surprise, right? I mean, Hurley had the unfortunate car accident. Brian Kelly told us he was back home in Jacksonville going through a rehabilitation. So I don't think anyone anticipated he was going to be at spring, but he wasn't. So your three quarterbacks were Nussmeier, Michael Van Buren, and Juwan Johnson, who's converted from running back to quarterback here in the spring. And then a couple of other things that I found interesting when you look at the secondary. Was told that the ones at corner were Ashton Stamps and Mansour Delane. That was one of the questions that I have throughout spring is, does Mansour Delane, who's primarily a boundary corner at Virginia Tech last year, does he play boundary corner or does he kick back and play safety? Well, a lot of that depends on maybe some of the development of guys like DJ Pickett or Jakeem Jackson at one of the corners. And then at safety, your starters were Tamarcus Cooley, the NC State transfer, and Javen Toviano. They at least got the first snap. And I think it's worth mentioning, and I don't mean to belabor the point, it's the first reps of the first day of spring. It is such a long way to go before you get to the opener against Clemson. It's a long way to go before you even get to the first day of fall camp. So somebody had to run out there with the first group on the first day, and so they did. And so we'll just continue to watch that, how it evolves over your month of spring drills before they get to April 12th with the spring game in Tiger Stadium. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.